What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Triple H podcast, Happy Hour Hoops. Me and Steve starting off the show tonight. Jake will be joining us shortly. And guys, don't forget, Happy Hour Hoops is brought to you by WinStreaks. Guys, WinStreaks is the best sports app out there right now. It's simple. You pick teams to win games, accumulate points, and then win cash prizes. WinStreaks is 100% free to play. Never deposit any of your precious money, and you can still win cash prizes. Sports like the NBA, our favorite, NFL, NHL, college basketball, college football when both of those come back around. And now, of course, the MLB. 100 players win cash prizes every week up to $2,000. Contest runs every week from Monday to Sunday. Again, no deposits ever. And use our code HHH when you sign up, please. It's a great help to us. So download the WinStreaks app and stay locked in with us. Thank you to WinStreaks. Steve, craziness in the NBA world right now. We have three series tied at 2-2 in the second round, a couple of games that are going to happen tonight, and then the Cavs Celtics, which we watched last night. My Boston Celtics go up 3-1 in a sketchy game without Donovan Mitchell last night. For the first close playoff game the C's have had, and it's just a great time. I say it every week we get on here. There's no better time of year than this. It's just playoff basketball every night, and it's just lovely.
Yeah, I mean, you almost called it yesterday too, Donnie, right? On Trainwreck tonight when you talk about, oh, this might be the Max Strus game. And he goes off right off the bat, hits a couple threes. I'm like, oh, no. Donnie buried his own grave here. But a great game from the Jays again. Also, kind of crazy. We haven't really seen on Twitter all the Mickey Mouse memes with Jason Tatum on his back-to-back 30-point, performances, double-digit rebounds. He's been great the last two games. It's been good to see because they kind of need it too, right? Because we talked about, how great Derek White has been. Was it sustainable? Who knows? But you don't want to rely on that, right? And it's nice to see the Jays step up. I mean, Jaylen Brown, for some reason, and it's just because I think people hate the Boston Celtics and they don't want to admit how good the Jays are. Jaylen Brown has just always showed up in the playoffs, it feels like. Yeah. And once again, you're looking at his stats. He's averaging 25, like 6 and 4, good shooting splits, playing great defense. So you got to be feeling good. And then the other three series, Donnie, it's kind of just been a complete change from what we thought really at the start of the series, especially Denver, Minnesota, where Minnesota was talked about as Anthony Edwards is the next Michael Jordan. They're going to sweep the Nuggets. This is the team that should be the favorite to win the West. And next thing you know, the Nuggets beat them up twice in Minnesota. Now you're going to Denver tonight, and I'll tell you what, It honestly, to me, that series kind of felt like it comes down to that 4-day rest that the Nuggets got. The inexperience plays into it, the coaching. So that series has changed. The Knicks can't stay healthy. They're playing with like a 6-man rotation. Alec Burks is getting significant minutes now.
Shake Milton, Jericho Sims, those guys are getting in.
Those guys are getting in. So the Pacers have completely changed. So that Halliburton looks like old Halliburton again, finally. McConnell's been balling, and
they killed the Knicks, and I think Siakam only took 9 shots in that game.
Complete change in that series. And then you have Mavs Thunder, where the Mavs, and I know that series hasn't changed as much because it's kind of been a game-by-game type of feel. Game
all
3
those games
was close.
Like anyone can really win them.
But game 1, the Thunder won handily. It was the classic Jason Kidd game 1 game. But, game 4, the Mavs look great in the first half. They have a chance to put the Thunder away, go up 3-1 in the series, probably have their worst quarter of the entire postseason.
That third quarter, right?
In the fourth quarter. The third quarter wasn't great, but the fourth quarter was an utter
disaster. When they couldn't score,
utter disaster. And next thing you know, now it's 2-2. Going back to OKC. So these series, like the feeling of them have kind of changed. And honestly, Donnie, I really think for the 3 series that are tied 2-2, they're all completely up in the air. You look at the Knicks right now, I think they're a 1-point favorite at home, which to me is crazy with how injured they've been and how they've looked, with Anunoby, you're not playing. They're a completely different team.
Yeah.
They're still a 1-point favorite. That really says a lot of, how hard it is to win at Madison Square Garden and how tough this Knicks team is with, their next man up mentality. And then you got the Nuggets now after, 2 bad performances at home. Then they win 2 games against Minnesota. They're now favored, 4-point favorite at home. So these series are tight regardless. There's really is, I don't think any of these series are probably, you know what? No, I actually probably do think 2 of these series go 7.
Yeah.
I don't know which 2 yet. I don't know if they all go 7.
I think all 3 of them could. They're all definitely live to. I mean, it's
I
kind of
definitely
dumb to
think
say
all
they're all
3
tied,
could.
but there's been drama in all of them. There's been injuries in all of them.
Yeah.
Just pure chaos in the Wolves Nuggets series if we're talking about that one. So yeah, it's been great. We're gonna kind of hone in on every series a little bit as we go here. But the NBA kind of pulled an MLB on Sunday afternoon and just kind of snuck the draft lottery in there on us. Not really much advertisement for this. No one really talked about it all that much, and it was in between. I guess it was before both playoff games, right? I don't think Knicks Pacers hadn't started yet.
It was before. It was right before the playoff games.
Yeah, so Sunday afternoon on Mother's Day, just really wanted to sneak in this draft lottery, and it sucks because it's one of the at least to this point, it's one of the worst graded drafts in years. And we got the lottery, so I'll read that for you guys. It goes Atlanta, Washington, Houston, San Antonio, Detroit, Charlotte, Portland, San Antonio again at 8, Memphis 9, Utah 10, Chicago 11, OKC 12, which is very interesting, Sacramento at 13, and then Portland again at 14. And I know most of NBA fans listening to this, you guys probably already know the draft lottery. We're not going to spend too much time here. Steve, just kind of rapid fire questions here about the draft.
Yeah.
Atlanta Hawks have the number 1. It also seems like they have some sort of Trae Young, DeJounte Murray decision to make this summer, because I know it's only been 2 years. It doesn't really seem like that experiment has worked. It seems like one, if not both of those guys have grown frustrated. What do you see Atlanta doing at the number 1 pick? As I said, this draft isn't too strong. There's not really a clear-cut number 1 guy in this draft. What do you see them doing? You think they stay put? Are they trading it?
Well, honestly, Donnie, there's no clear-cut number 1 here, but I think Atlanta, of any team to have the number 1 pick, is in such a great spot because we were talking about
odds of getting that number 1 pick.
Right, 3% odds. And if we talk about it, if that was the last year, we go back in time last year, the Mavs would have had the number 1 pick, and I got robbed of Wemby on the Mavs. But that's besides the point. Atlanta has the number 1 pick, but also too they have 2 stars with good trade value in Trae Young and DeJounte Murray that they could deal off if they want to do a complete rebuild, right? You have a good young player in Jalen Johnson who was kind of overshadowed by Tyrese Maxey and Kobe White, but Jalen Johnson took an incredible leap this season. You still have DeAndre Hunter. Like, you have pieces that you can move if you want to, and you also have the number 1 pick. And regardless of how strong the draft class is, the number 1 pick is the number 1 pick. And we know, Dunny, how this goes. Give it a few weeks, give it a month or so with guys scouting everyone. There's going to be someone who emerges and is going to be like, okay, this is the clear-cut number 1 pick. And right now we have seen Sarr somewhat emerge as the guy on a lot of the projected mock drafts is going number 1 to the Hawks. But in all honesty, I would not be surprised if the Hawks traded this pick. I would not be surprised if the Hawks traded Trae Young. The Hawks have as many options as they want, right? You could sit tight with Trae Young and trade DeJounte Murray. I think you have to trade at least one of them. But you could sit tight with whichever one you choose, right, and draft at the number 1 pick and then figure out everything from there. Because like I said, Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Hunter, still 2 really good young players I like quite a bit. Or, you could kind of trade everything. And if you want to talk about maybe moving back or maybe making a blockbuster deal too, you have Trae Young that a lot of teams could want, and the San Antonio Spurs have picked 4 and 8 in a draft class where it's not considered, this is the surefire number 1 guy, or this is the surefire how the top 5 is going to go. You could trade Trae Young to San Antonio, maybe try to get, one of those first-round picks there, make a little package, see what you can get, and next thing you know, if you play your cards right, you could have 3 lottery picks in this draft class, which 3 lottery picks in any draft class is great for a rebuilding team. You could also, like I said, Dunny, trade the first pick and trade back and get, a plethora of picks or maybe some other young
I think
pieces.
that's what I would do if I was there, just because of the unknown of this draft class, the fact that, there's people out there saying, the ceiling of this draft class is Derek Lively and Tobias Harris. I think I got that information from Ryan Russillo. He said he heard that from a scout. So, just that's never a good thing to hear if you're the team who has the number 1 pick.
But also too, Dunny, I know we've said weak draft class. Majority of these guys are international players. What's been the scouting report on international players the past 5-6 years? Oh, they're gonna be all right. They're gonna be all right, and then they exceed expectations every single time. So that's where I'm almost kind of like, if you're Atlanta, wouldn't you maybe want to accumulate picks, trade Trae Young, trade the first pick, and just kind of see how many pieces you can get? Because we've talked about it all year long. Atlanta probably wants to do a full rebuild, and obviously the 2 guard situation with Murray and Trae Young isn't working, but both those guys still have value. Regardless of what draft class it is, the first pick will have value. So I think Atlanta's in a really good spot.
I think the only thing with trading too much assets or trading too much of their assets they have now for picks and future assets is, I believe it's San Antonio. Someone else has their first round pick for next year. So I think they're trying to avoid being bad next year. I don't know if it's a protected pick or what it is, but I believe the Spurs have their first round pick for next year. So I just don't think they want to go full tank mode. But yeah, they have, a bunch of options. Jake is actually now with us. He's in the queue. What's up, Jake? We're just talking the NBA draft here. No biggie. Or the draft lottery, I should say.
Yeah. What a wild jump.
3% chance for Atlanta.
Man. That was the last team I was saying. The draft lottery, you guys were having some good comment about the actual prospects and everything. The draft lottery is just comedy watching, like, especially when teams get jumped over. Like, All-Star Thompson just looks so pissed. He's like, we're really number 5 again, bro. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, putting those guys out. And it's hilarious how they get selected. Like, you get Ime Udoka sitting there, and then you have, like, fringe, like, I don't even know. I'm going to be honest. Sorry, I think he's in the chat. Yeah, JBC's here. No idea who Julian Phillips was. That name went over my head completely for the Bulls. I was like, I've never heard of this guy. I have no recollection. I looked him up, and then I remembered afterwards when I saw it. I was like, that guy doesn't exist. Like, that's a Windy City Bowl or something out there. They said.
I saw a clip of Scoot just not really looking that happy at the lottery either.
Bro, they interviewed Scoot, and he wanted no part to talk about it. He was just like, please don't ask me questions about this. I'm sorry, JBC. No shade to the Bulls.
Poor JBC. We're shading the Bulls every episode, I feel like. Right at the start, too. I'm sorry, JBC.
I'm just being honest.
So that was our short, draft lottery talk here. I guess one more thing for you guys. Who is like one prospect, you can say a team you might want him to go to, or, just someone you're kind of watching in this top 14 who you think is a sure thing to go there, or maybe someone that isn't, a consensus lottery guy, but you guys think will go there. Steve, we'll start with you.
I don't really know exact spot because, like I said, Dunny, so much of this could change. But there's a couple, I guess you would say, prospects that I kind of like that aren't getting as hyped up right now as some of the others. I'm hoping they move up. First one's Matas Buzelis. I think Buzelis, he was not a couple years ago, I think a year ago was kind of projected, he could be potential number 1 pick in this class. I think he's got the best offensive ability. He's a raw prospect by all means, and he has to kind of work on ball handling. He has to kind of work on the fundamentals a bit. But if you want to talk about offensive versatility, Matas Buzelis is exactly what you want. He's a tall, lengthy forward, I think like 6'9", like 200 pounds, and he just can score from all areas of the court. And that's something that, we don't really have in the top guys right now, right? They're a little more defensive based, like Kaiser and Sarr. So I do like Buzelis. And then if I got to go a little college basketball bias, right? It would be weird if I don't go college basketball bias. Rob Dillingham of Kentucky, I think, could be an absolute superstar. I mean, he's just built. He's just super strong, and he's just such a good overall guard. He's got great ball handling skills. He can shoot the ball very well at Kentucky, but like I said, I think he's only 6'3", but he's strong. He plays bigger than 6'3" too, and I like that about Dillingham. And then the last one here, I know this team always kind of chokes, but they actually made a little run in March Madness, and I think he was the main reason. Dalton Knecht at Tennessee. Dalton Knecht at Tennessee is another one that I think he's just built like a guy who's going to be a solid player in the NBA. 6'6", 200 pounds, can score from anywhere. He can play off ball. He can play on ball. He's got a little bit of good defense too. He can drive. He can shoot. You show all of that at Tennessee. Dalton Knecht, and then very, very last honorable mention, because, it wouldn't be Steve without a couple honorable mentions. Cody Williams, man. Cody Williams of Colorado. Cody Williams, the younger brother of Jalen Williams. I was going to say,
that's Jalen Williams.
J-Dub on the Oklahoma City Thunder, the one who came in second or third, I think, for Rookie of the Year a couple of years ago. Cody Williams, probably a bit more athletic than Jalen Williams. He's 6'9", almost 200 pounds. He can score from everywhere. Wingspan. A giant wingspan. A great shooter. He's super, super athletic. And it's also me, too, kind of just being the genetics thing where, well, look at what Jalen Williams did, right? Came out of Santa Clara. People were kind of like, oh, yeah, he'll be all right. And then he was, in my opinion, that year, the biggest surprise of all the rookies. Mm-hmm. Cody Williams, hey, he's got the same genetics, and he's a more athletic build, who's probably a more polished three-point shooter, maybe not overall scorer in the college, but a three-point shooter. Man, I'll tell you what, and also Cody Williams, too. Talk about defense. He could be the best defensive player from this class, with his wingspan and athletic ability. Yeah. I think there's some guys there that all four of those players I mentioned could be outside the top 5. And Cody Williams and Knecht could be maybe outside the top 10, potentially maybe outside the lottery, when I think they could be, like we said, it's not the most stacked top-heavy class, but they could come out as the best players from this class. So I think, Dunny, this class or this draft is a great opportunity for teams kind of in the middle picks, or maybe even teams to trade up to some of those picks in the teens to get a guy who has a potential to be the best player from the class in a couple of years.
Oh, I get Jake. Who you got your eyes on here?
I mean, that was well said. Dillingham to the Spurs is my dream to partner with.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yes,
partner with Wemby.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Very excited about that. I'm very excited about Cody Williams. I also would reassure. I think that's how you say it. Seeing another Frenchman on the Spurs would be interesting. I'm really just looking at who you're going to pair with Wemby. I was hoping they'd get the number 1 pick. I feel like you said it earlier. Sars feels like a pretty safe bet at this point to be. I wouldn't even say a safe bet, but like the consensus
right
number
now
1 guy there, especially Capella going into his last year. You might want to build around that. It's going to be a class that there's going to be a couple guys that pop out of here like there always are. Like everybody's always down on draft classes beforehand, and that by the time we get around to it, there's going to be 2 or 3 guys at the beginning of next year that are like, oh shit. That guy's that good. Reed Shepherd, too. I'm really interested to see where Reed Shepherd ends up, because that's a guy who I don't know if he has like an all-star potential in the NBA, but I feel like he can step in and contribute right away and be a good player on one of these teams, especially when you're talking like the Rockets, who I don't know what the Rockets are going to be looking at with their 2 picks in there, but to have some shooting on that team alongside Jalen Green and alongside Van Vliet and everything, he might be a nice fit. But just like a team like that can afford to take a flyer on a guy that can come in and like maybe doesn't have the highest ceiling but can contribute right away. I feel like that's where Shepherd kind of fits right in there.
Yeah, I love the 2 Kentucky guys, and I think Sarr's probably number 1 consensus too, but something tells me Atlanta doesn't want to take him. I don't know. It's just such a weird lottery. The way it got shaken up, Detroit getting 5, Atlanta getting 1, and then I think it's so interesting that San Antonio has both 4 and 8. I think they have, just such great options. I'm in complete agreement with you, Jake. I hope they take Dillingham at 4 and just kind of secure the scoring guard to put alongside Wemby. But for me and Steve were talking about how this guy has been climbing the draft board all of a sudden. Donovan Clingan Mm-hmm. I wish he wasn't climbing because I think he would be a fantastic fit in Memphis. They shipped Steven Adams after the injury in the middle of the season, after they kind of punted on the season with Smart and Ja both getting hurt. But I think if you put Klingon next to JJJ and he falls to Memphis at 9, I don't know why. I was thinking about that today. I kind of love the fit. But me and Steve were talking about it. In some mocks, he's going 2 right now to Washington. So it's going to be interesting. NBA lottery itself wasn't that exciting, but obviously once you get into the brass tacks of this stuff and it starts to happen and we get to draft time, this stuff gets exciting, especially because we could see a bunch of trades, just with the multiple teams with multiple picks in the lottery, Atlanta having no idea what the fuck to do with their future. It's all good stuff.
I'll tell you what, if Cody Williams is sitting there at 12, OKC ain't passing up on him. No. I'll tell you what, OKC's not passing up on him. And I'm really curious to see what Houston will do at 3. We talked about Houston as one of our favorite kind of young teams that's just starting to finally put it together. And they, we saw what they did at the very end of last year, the run they went on to almost steal that 10th spot from the Warriors. I'm curious. They got a top 3 pick, guys.
Yeah.
That could be a really interesting landing spot with Houston.
I think so too. And it's just crazy even mentioning that OKC has a top 12 pick and they're in the position that they're in right now, tied 2-2 against your Mavericks, Steve. So this is the segue here. Let's rip the Band-Aid. You don't have to talk about last night. You can talk about last night. We're going to spend a few minutes on each series here. So whatever you want to say about the Mavs Thunder. I know we started with a little bit on all the series, but what do you got from last night?
Mavs had a chance to kind of put the series away and they blew it. One of the biggest, reasons they blew it, 12 of 23 from the free throw line. That's just unacceptable. You cannot do that in the playoffs. You miss 11 free throws and you end up losing the game by 4. You just can't have it. It's no excuses, though, right? You want to talk about Luka had a very, very poor game offensively. I will be the first to admit that. He had more turnovers than made shots, and it felt like there were multiple possessions where Luka was arguing he didn't get a call rather than trying to finish the play or finish the drive. And that could be frustrating to watch because the series is 2-2 right now. Very possibly the Mavs could be up 3-1 if they just didn't collapse last game. And that's also saying, too, that they potentially could have been up 3-1 where Luka and Kyrie have just not played well so far this series. And to be tied 2-2 against Oklahoma City Thunder, I got to be grateful against that. Going back to OKC, that's going to be tough. But we've seen this in the past with the Mavs where they win that game 5 and then they win game 6 at home. They did it last series against the Clippers. They've won on the road in the playoffs before, and Luka's won on the road in the playoffs before, and he's also great at bouncing back after losses. But last night was a little concerning in the fact that Luka just hasn't looked himself in pretty much 4 games now. I guess you could say game 2, he did look a lot better, and I guess I'll give him credit for that. So I guess 3 of the 4 games hasn't really looked himself. And game 4 was probably the worst he's looked all playoffs. Mm-hmm. And that's a big red flag because PJ Washington, as much as I love him, as much as he's turned into one of my favorite players, I always liked him before the Mavs. Now I will run through a brick wall for that guy. You can't expect him to get 20, 25 a night. You just can't.
That was my biggest thing with this game last night because, honestly, in the first half, the Mavs looked like they were in control, and it really just kind of came down to, neither Kyrie or Luka being able to find their shot. And, it's great what PJ Washington's been doing. I want to kind of compare it to what Derek White did in the Miami series.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like some of those games are like, holy fucking shit, Derek White, and there's guys like Shaq and a few others on TV where like, if he can keep this up, then there's no way the Celtics lose any of these series, and they should coast to the championship. But with guys like that, they're a luxury because they can do that every once in a while, and they do all the other little things. But that's just they're not guys that you can rely on night in, night out. It's not fair to expect that from them, and it's just not it's not smart to expect that from them. So. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean about PJ Washington. It can almost get overhyped, and then it looks like he's having a bad game when he's just kind of doing what he's supposed to and letting the stars take over. It just didn't work out that way last night.
I mean, 21 and 12 from PJ Washington. Yeah, it was 7 and 19 from the floor, but 5 of 11 from 3. That's exactly what you want out of PJ Washington. What you don't want is Kyrie Irving to only take 11 shots, 4 of 11 from the field, and only score 9 points. What you don't want is Luka to be 6 of 20. You don't want Kyrie and Luka to be 10 of 31 combined for only 27 points. That's what you don't want, because you look at that, you can look at it glass half full or glass half empty, right? You can look at it as, we're going back to OKC. Luka's played terrible. He's been complaining about every call. He doesn't look like himself. He's clearly dealing through an injury, and Kyrie's not stepping up. Like that, if I just said that, that's doomsday scenario. You're probably like, KC swept them, right? But you can also look glass half full and be like, hey, Luka and Kyrie played terrible. They were 10 of 30 or 11 of 31, 10 of 31 from the floor last night. They only combined for 27 points. They had more turnovers than made field goals, and we only lost that game by 4. Mm-hmm. And the series is tied 2-2. So you can look at it both ways. You just got to take it one game at a time as a Mavs fan at this point and just really hope that Luka could just somehow find some health in his legs, because you can clearly tell he's in pain.
Oh, yeah.
But I also think
multiple injuries, I think.
It's not just affecting him physically right now on the basketball court with the legs. I think it's affecting him mentally too, where now it feels like he's broken down, where he's just complaining when he's not getting every call. And it's Luka, it's the playoffs. They call a much shorter whistle, right? They're going to let him play. They're going to let Dort beat you up. I get you're in pain. I get you're dealing with your injuries to your legs, but we've seen you before in previous playoff series take over. Like, you just got to forget it. He's playing to get calls right now. Don't do that. Play to win the game. Play to make your shots. The calls will happen one way or not. And also, too, and I got to give SGA some credit, right? Because my whole MVP take the entire season. SGA had a unbelievable second half and probably willed the Thunder to that Game 4 win. He needs some help too, because Chet and J-Dub have kind of disappeared in this series.
That was my only question for the series. It's will J-Dub kind of honestly the whole playoffs? I mean, his numbers have been way down compared to the regular season.
Yeah,
I think he's had some good games. I don't want to completely shit on the guy, but yeah, I was surprised by the way the Thunder offense looked in the first half, and then it took SGA pretty much having to hit everything down the stretch for them.
Every mid-range shot. It felt like you were watching a 90s game. Beat you up on defense. Both teams were beating each other up on defense, and SGA was just getting anything he could mid-range. So
is it Mavs in 7?
I mean, I still am going to go Mavs in 6, because I've said this before. I think the Mavs are one of the best bounce-back teams after a loss, and I think this was kind of a big loss in terms of the whole kind of demeanor of the Mavs, where we've seen this before, where they've had kind of either choke away a lead or they've had a bad loss where they've kind of had the game and they bounce back the next game. And Luka's bounced back after losses. The Mavs, like I said, one of the best bounce back teams after a loss. They lose every game 1 under Jason Kidd. Then they win game 2. I think if the Mavs win game 5, they'll win it in 6. If they lose game 5, man, I'm a little worried at that point. I don't know if this series goes 7. I'm almost willing to say the team that wins game 5 wins the series. Whoa. And I don't feel that way about the other series that are tied 2-2. It just feels like that kind of series to me, where momentum is going to be so big and it's going to be who's going to step up. But will it be Kyrie? Will it be Jalen Williams? Will it be Chet? Or maybe will Luka have a good scoring game like he did in game 2? Because like I said, you can't trust PJ Washington to score 25 every night. And if you're the Thunder, you can't just expect SGA to do what he did in game 4.
Yeah, Jake, where do you have this series going? Do you have this going? Do you have Mavs OKC going 7, or you kind of have the same sentiment as Steve?
I'm with Steve. I think that last night was I think it was more of unforced error on Dallas's part than OKC taking that game from them. You mentioned the free throws. That was going to be the first thing I mentioned too, that if you split that difference even, it's a different game. It's a win. So that's really what it comes down to. It feels like the Mavs have been the better team the whole series. I think they do close it out in 6. And it is crazy to think about what it would be like if Luka was fully healthy, because I don't even think it would be as competitive as it is. And it's the OKC roster construction. I mean, the crazy thing about Dallas is that they made those moves. They got size. They got deep. We talked about it. They got depth. They got deeper. They kind of filled the holes they needed to do. And then they matched up with a team that's perfect for them in OKC, who is lacking in all those areas that Dallas bulked up on. And it's a team that was just like really OKC. It was the worst match they could have gotten, getting Dallas in this round. I know it's 2-2 or in everything else, but I feel like OKC would have had a better, maybe they wouldn't have had a better chance against Denver or Minnesota, but I don't know. This just feels like a terrible matchup for them, the way that the rosters are constructed. Maybe it would have been that way no matter who it was, the way OKC is currently constructed. So, but don't want to take anything away from Dallas because they've been awesome in this series. It's not just because they're matching up better than OKC. But yeah, I still think it's in 6. I still think it goes in 6.
I think I kind of have the same thoughts with Steve about Game 5. I think if OKC wins Game 5, they win in 6. I think if the Mavs win Game 5, they win in 7. So a little different, but I think if this goes 7, regardless who wins next game, I think if it just goes 7, I don't think that bodes well for OKC.
It being at home for them.
Yeah, I feel like I just trust Luka and especially Kyrie in a Game 7. I know, look, you can say whatever you want about Kyrie from when he played for the Cavs until now, but he looks like a different dude in these playoffs. And I just feel like the big shots and, Luka not wanting to get sent home early again, and then Kyrie just kind of having that experience. I trust those guys in a Game 7 more. We'll obviously see how banged up Luka looks if we get to that point, but that's my prediction. Jake, Cavs Celtics 3-1. Your Cavs, they almost stole one without Dawn last night. They really impressed me. I don't know how you felt watching. The shooting to start the game was fucking incredible. They had a good game plan where they just kind of mucked it up and just they were determined to outshoot the Celtics from 3. And it was working for a while, but the Jays kind of became too much down the stretch. What did you see last night?
That's all my complaints about the Cavs, and I got to do this quick here. All my complaints about the Cavs this year, when they're shorthanded or anytime, honestly, they look like they're in a bad matchup, they fight. Like, that team shows fight. They always have. That's the one thing you can count on with JB Bickerstaff. Don't like him as an X's and O coach, but he gets them motivated and believing that they can play in that game, and that's what it looked like to me. Like you said, they were bombing from 3. They made a point. We're just going to bomb from 3 and hope that these shots hit tonight. We're home. We got the crowd behind us. And it kept them in that game longer than it really should have. Honestly, I didn't think it was going to be a 7-point game. I didn't think that they'd cover the spread by the end. They were definitely overmatched by the Jays. Awesome performance from Tatum, especially that first quarter. Watching Tatum was crazy.
Yeah,
to
16
see.
in the first.
It was nuts. But that's what you expect. That's what I expect from the Cavs, to come out and fight. I didn't think they'd keep it that close, but it was a good effort from this team. It is what it is with them at this point. They were missing their 2 best players in that game. Like, it just, not that I don't know if Allen and Mitchell make a difference and make them win that game necessarily, but it would have been nice to see them in this series. So that's what it came down to, especially with Mitchell out last night. It's a big damper just on that in general. My only solace is that LeBron showed up so that he and Don could have a nice meeting backstage and be like, listen, Don, if you just stick around, don't ask for that trade just yet. The house in Akron's still looking good. We're out here. That's the only hope. That's the biggest hope I have. But hey, it was a good fight, man. They gave the crowd a hell of a show last night.
They did. And Windhorst was even saying that, that had some eyebrows getting raised in the NBA circles.
The last time LeBron showed up to a Cavs game, not as a member of a Cavs, he showed up to Ilgauskas' jersey retirement as a member of the Heat. And the next summer, signed with the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's all I'm saying.
Oh.
All right. Hopefully I'll be back by the end of this show, but I'll be back, boys.
All right. Thanks, Jake. Checking in, talking Cavs Celtics. I mean, yeah, he covered a lot right there. It was good fight from the Cavs. I was impressed by, I knew Strus was going to have a game like this at some point against us. I was more impressed by Garland just because it seems like he was able to figure some things out for himself.
He scored 30, right?
Yeah, and he was it was just like when he was losing a defender, or if he was left open, he was having one of those games where you just knew it was going. Deep threes, contested, didn't really matter. And then the dribble drive, which he's always been kind of good at, was working really well for him. Horford, I don't know how much of this game you caught, Steve, but the Al Horford minutes, and you'll never hear this from me, but they were really, really bad last night.
Yeah, they were.
He played, I thought, too many minutes in game 3. Too many minutes last night. I don't really know what the point of going to get Tillman was if we're not going to use him. And I'm not even saying Al shouldn't have started. I still love Al in the starting lineup. I still think he's deserving of some minutes, but playing him 30 plus minutes in back-to-back games when you have guys, and we are going up against a depleted Cavs team at this point, especially without Mitchell last night. I didn't really agree with him, but then, I checked the box score and he had the highest plus minus on the team. So it's one of those things where I'm like, all right, what the fuck do I know? Maybe it just helps to have Big Al out there. But yeah, other than that, I was just happy to see, the Jays kind of silence some of the hate. It's crazy because you turn on ESPN and then they weren't impressed with the shooting splits from Tatum. Oh yeah, he had back-to-back 30-point games, but yeah, it's crazy, man. If we have time, I have a little bit of a discourse that I want to dispute, but that's Cavs Celtics. I anticipate they close this at home tomorrow night. You think it's a gentleman's sweep here?
I think it's a gentleman's sweep, Dunny, and I think for a Celtics fan, you're in a great spot because I think you have a gentleman's sweep on your hands, and you're either going to be playing a really banged-up New York Knicks team or an Indiana Pacers team that you match up unbelievably well against. But also, that series is 2-2, and both series in the West is 2-2. They're all playing extra games compared to the Celtics, who, like I said, I think it's a gentleman's sweep, and next thing you know, you're waiting for a few days. You get to rest up for a little bit, and that's huge, not only for, maybe getting, some guys back, but also, too, just resting your stars.
Yeah. No, it seems like it's going to be an important thing to be able to close this out tomorrow night. And, yeah, I mean, it's either the, hospital Knicks or the inexperienced Pacers who might have to go through a 7-game series against that. They are the hospital Knicks right now, but it's also the hostile Knicks. So we'll see, man. I'm really intrigued. Everyone in the national media is telling me that I shouldn't be impressed or pleased, but my team's one win away from making another Eastern Conference Finals. I'm over the moon, dude. I'm not letting that bullshit get in the way. Jays.
That'll be 5, right, for Tatum? 5 Eastern Conference Finals.
It's
yeah, but he's not good in the playoffs.
It's a special player, man. I'll leave it at that. ESPN can say what they want, but yeah, let's do a little jump over in the dock here. Let's go Knicks Pacers because we were just talking about them.
Yeah,
they have their game in just about a half hour. OG Anunoby was ruled out already, which just sucks for them. But they are back home. Game 5 in MSG. They got blown out, and their starters actually, their starters, whatever they've pieced together for their starters now, actually got some legit rest because they didn't play the fourth quarter of last game. I think Hart, after playing back-to-back 48-minute games, only played 24.
Yeah, 24. He got to sit on a bench for the first half for the first time all series.
So what's your anticipation for tonight?
It's a weird one because we were talking about it at the start of the show that the Knicks are favored, and it's like, how is this team still like? It's a 1-point favorite, right? It's like a pick 'em type game, but it's like how is this team still favored with how banged up they've been? But I think that goes to show how hard it is really to win at the Garden, especially in these kind of must-win situations. Pacers played great last game. Halliburton has finally, the past couple games, has finally started to look like Halliburton when they were playing in the in-season tournament, right? Before the injury, he was out for a little bit this year with. So the Pacers look great, but it's really hard to doubt this Knicks team. And like I said, Dunny, if there's anyone who is next man up or has that tough mentality, it is going to be this New York Knicks team. Yeah. And I am concerned because the games without Anunoby, they look like a completely different team. but it just feels like it's going to be kind of a spot in the Garden where it's just going to be one of those like 95, like 92 grind you out games where they're just not going to let the Pacers run. And I think it kind of favors the Knicks. I think that's what they're going to want to do in this situation is slow it down. And like you said, too, they got rest last game. Yeah, they were down 40 in Indiana, and that's the reason. But any rest is good amount of rest. And if there's a team that needs the rest more than any other team, it's this New York Knicks team. So I expect them to come out firing, fresh, locked down on defense. And I think Knicks win here because I think Indiana wins in game 6, and then game 7, all bets are off in the Garden. Who knows who will take that one home. But I do think this series goes 7 because I don't see the Knicks winning game 6 in Indiana. So this feels like a must win. I know every game in the playoffs is a must win. I hate that kind of phrase, but it does feel like to the next series, you lose this game, you lose the series.
I think so. Because they got the extended rest, after being able to sit their guys in the 4th, and then they got an extra day.
Yeah.
So I think I'm with you. Like, Knicks seem like they have to win this one because they're, the rest of the series is not going to be a better chance. You go back to Indiana, you saw what happened there last game. Halliburton has his confidence all the way back. It's so tough talking about this series because on the one hand, it's like the Knicks already were coming into the playoffs without Randall. They lose Mitchell Robinson. They lose OG Anunoby. And then they still were playing super great the very start of the series. Indiana crawls back. It's tied 2-2. It's almost hard to give Indiana props here without Knicks fans getting mad at you or like feeling inside yourself, even saying it, being like, is this fair? But at the same time, like, shout out the Pacers, man. Like, Nembhard made a fucking disgustingly big shot in game 3. And then they just came out as a unit, and Rick Carlisle told them to run, and that's exactly what they did. And like I said, Pascal Siakam, like, he only had to shoot 9 times in that blowout.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, you got to give the Pacers some credit, right? You can blame the Knicks injuries as much as you want, but we're also talking about, and I know Nembhard made the big shot too, but we're talking about game 1 could have gone either way too. Game 1 and game 3 could have gone either way. This has been a really, really tight series.
Mm-hmm. Game 2 is close down the stretch as well. Yeah. And it's just 2 really good teams. Unfortunate for the Knicks that they're not at full strength. One question for you, or I guess, I don't know, this is just kind of what I think. And of course, we're talking about a team that's coached by Tom Thibodeau. So it's tough to say, or it's even tough to even picture this. But am I crazy for thinking that we can implement Jericho Sims and Alec Burks and Shake Milton a little earlier in the game? Like, the only reason they got run last game is because they were getting blown out. Like, doesn't it make, like, are those guys that bad? I remember Shake Milton getting some minutes in Philly, and like, I know Alec Burks is on the tail end, but like, Jericho Sims is at least a live ball. Like, he's athletic as hell. Like, is there nothing they can throw him out there for?
Jericho Sims, I don't hate like throwing him out there, but sometimes I think it's tough to stretch the floor with Jericho Sims. He can be a liability on offense, but Alec Burks has always just kind of been a bucket, coming off the bench, and that's what the Knicks need with scoring. I mean, you'll have your defense, right? Hartenstein, Josh Hart, they'll play their defense. Precious Chua is a great defender. You gotta spell some of these guys with scoring, and I think that's what Alex Burks brings. I want to see him play more, and also I want to see the Knicks maybe play a little small ball against the Pacers, right? Because I think they can afford to play small ball against the Pacers. Yeah, I think you can play Precious. Josh Hart plays a lot bigger than he is. Miles McBride, I think he plays tough too. Give him some more minutes. So we'll see, because my biggest concern when we go back to the start of our playoff prediction, Dunny, right? My biggest concern for the New York Knicks team, and this is before all the additional injuries, was I don't know if Jalen Brunson, as much as I love him, is the type of player who can just take that much on the offense game after game after game after game. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he had his stretch. He was out of this world, unbelievable in the Philadelphia series. But we're starting to see it kind of take attacks on him here in the Indiana series, where Brunson just can't have that like 40% usage rate. He just can't be taking 30 shots a game, and he shouldn't have to. I'm not saying that Brunson's a bad player by all means for that. I'm saying he's been playing unbelievable. He played above his head in Philly, but he's been unbelievable in this postseason. But get the man some help, and get him some help besides just DiVincenzo chucking up 15 threes and hoping it's a hot shooting night. And I love DiVincenzo. And you know how much I love Josh Hart. He's been one of the most valuable players this playoffs. But Josh Hart is not like a go-to offensive option. He can score a little bit here and there. But Alec Burks could be a guy. Right.
Like DiVincenzo, he had 35 in that game 3 loss. I forget who was saying. It might have been the guys on Part of My Take. But someone was like, to get that game from DiVincenzo and to not win in the state that the Knicks are in, like that is tough because – to ask DiVincenzo to score 35 a night is just unfair. It's kind of like the thing we're talking about with PJ Washington. It's like at some point, it's going to need to be Kyrie and Luka who just fully carry a game, and you don't need that.
Yes.
That's where the Knicks are at, but they don't have anyone else to turn to.
So maybe a more balanced scoring attack. That's what the Pacers have showed us in the games that they've been winning, right?
And I'm not even
everyone's getting involved.
These bench guys need more minutes than they played last game. I'm just wondering if you implement it earlier and like almost use it as a spark. Like use the guys that you have. I know that you don't want to and you wouldn't if you had a full roster, but I just think throwing Shake, Alec Burks, maybe Jericho Sims only when Obi's out there to match the athleticism. Yeah, I think McBride, he's gonna get his minutes anyway. Just because he's been good. But I just mean these guys that just get pulled off, just because it was a blowout the other night. I mean, try, just throw shit at the wall at this point if you're the Knicks because you need to, and you're going to be an MSG, so you should have the crowd on your side. But we'll see. Jake joins us back for the last series here. Nuggets, T-Wolves. I mentioned this on Trainwreck tonight last night. So when a team starts down 0-2 on the road, only 5 teams have ever come back to win that series in those circumstances. Do you guys think the Denver Nuggets will be one of those teams?
Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I do. I'm flip-flopping so much on this series.
You really are every game.
I really am, but I just don't see Jokic. I just don't see how he doesn't figure it out for 2 more games in this scenario. I think that the Wolves are going to go through their lumps this year, and this is going to be their heartbreaking loss, and the Nuggets are going to pull it out and then get smashed by Steve's Mavs. That's what's going to happen.
Oh, don't say that to me. Don't say that to me. We still got an OKC war.
I just think it's going 7, and I'm not picking against Denver at home in Game 7. That's what I've come down to at this point.
I'm kind of with you there. I think 2 things for this series, and this is why I think Denver is going to win. Number one, no team benefited more from going from Monday to Friday with that rest in between the Denver Nuggets, because when you have an extended rest like that, obviously both players on each side are going to get the rest, but it comes down to coaching, it comes down to experience, right? And it comes down to veterans to kind of adjust from the first 2 games of that series going forward. And you saw it clear as day in Game 3 where that Denver they were just so much more prepared than Minnesota. And also, too, I'm not going to try to take a shot at the guy because I love Anthony Edwards. He's one of my favorite players to watch. He feels like everyone's favorite player to watch right now. But if you look at kind of the personalities on Minnesota versus the personalities on this Denver Nuggets team is a strictly business, right? They're not overreacting to one game here or there, one play here or there. And this is a team that, that extended rest probably helped them adjust to get ready for the rest of the series because they've been in Minnesota's spot before where they've been up and they've lost the series. And they've been in tough series before. This Minnesota team, what do you think of with this Minnesota team? You think of dogs. You think of motion. You're telling me you're up 2-0 on the defending champs with a young team that people have kind of doubted all year long. You're now a top seed in the West. You're playing this Nuggets team that you just smoked in Game 2 on their home court. and now you got 3 days off before your next game, you got to be feeling like you're on top of the world. What's the only thing? And I know players don't listen to the media, but that's bullshit. They, of course, hear all this stuff. Anthony Edwards is the next Michael Jordan. This Timberwolves team's not only going to sweep the Nuggets, but they should be the favorites to win the NBA championship. They just hear that. And a team like Minnesota that's inexperienced, that has been inconsistent like in the past, that has, stars with these type of personalities, that's tough for them. And whether people want to admit it or not, I think that played a huge, huge advantage with Denver. So that's why I think this game here, I just think Denver's going to kind of look how they did in Minnesota. Now they're home. Now they got the home court on their side. They got the experience. When you punch a team like Denver in the mouth like Minnesota did in the first 2 days, it's really hard to continue that punch when you have that long of a gap in between. And blame the NBA scheduling. Blame them saying the other Western Conference series needs to catch up. We're going to give you – that just benefited the defending champs. If I'm a Minnesota fan, I'm pissed about that. But at the same time, too, you can't really do anything about it. But it's so tough now watching these last 2 games and just being like, man, like Denver just looks night and day from – it just looks like they watched – all they did for that 3-day break was just watch the game 1 and game 2 and adjust. And – man, I love Anthony Edwards. He had an unbelievable game 4. Karl Anthony Towns was miserably bad, but, you look at this team, you got to trust the experience with Denver here. You just have to.
That's where I'm at here. I really thought for me it was just Jamal and Jokic waking up in games 3 and 4. I mean, Jamal obviously so upset and frustrated with himself in game 2. Upset with the refs, clearly frustrated with himself. I mean, the Timberwolves were fucking picking him up 94 feet, not letting him get to his spots, not letting him even set up the offense. Jokic was throwing it out of bounds in game 2. Those two guys got the long rest that we talked about, and then since then have been fucking perfect. Like Jamal Murray just doesn't look injured anymore. No. And Jokic just kind of looks like he's like, oh yeah, I am that dude. I'm not going to let these guys, bother me. I'm going to get to my spots too. I'm going to get my teammates involved. And I just think when Jamal and Jokic are kind of working that 2-man game and it's not being stopped and it's not being disrupted like we saw in game 2, I think they're so hard to beat. And then I think their game plan defensively is, I think they just, especially in game 4, and I don't know if this is going to be the case going forward, but it kind of looks like they were just letting Ant get his. And they're like, we're not going to lose to this one guy, and we're going to shut everyone else down. They know Gobert doesn't like to shoot much anyway unless he's right under the rim. Cat had a horrible shooting night. And, they don't really have many other offensive options. I know guys like Kyle Anderson and McDaniel, they can score the ball, here and there. Mike Conley, he's been a scorer in his past, but he's kind of been quiet in this series as well. So it just feels Denver now, but the way everyone's talking about Ant and how fucking great he is, and he has been amazing to this point, he has an opportunity with his back against the wall and to, kind of come out and show that he is that dude. I have a Timberwolves little history question for you guys.
Okay.
Anthony Edwards has the most points in a playoff game for the Timberwolves. All of these in the last 2 years, but he has the number 1 spot at 44. He has the number 2 spot at 43, and he has a 41 and a 40-point game. Who is the second player with the second most points in a playoff game? Also a 40-point game.
Yeah, well, if you're asking the question, it's not going to be Kevin Garnett because that's the obvious answer. So if Donnie's posing the question like this, it's not going to be Kevin Garnett. So now I'm thinking either Sprewell or Sam Cassell. I'm going to go because I don't think any other Timberwolves teams recently had made like the playoffs. I'm going to go Cassell.
Jake?
If it's KG, I'm going to be pissed.
Who could it be? I was also going to say Cassell out of those two. What if it's just Cat?
Oh, yeah.
It's Sam Cassell.
It is. Let's go. Yeah. Let's go.
Steve's process is way too good, bro.
Let's go.
I thought for sure you guys were both going to guess KG because it was me asking the question.
When you asked the question, I'm like, it's so obvious everyone's first guess would be KG. I'm not guessing that, but I'll go with the KG team and go from there.
I think KG's playoff high was 35, which was surprising in first Timberwolves team.
That is surprising, though.
Still great, but they just didn't get there much. Disappointing, but yeah, man, this is special by Ant. I'll save my Ant conversation for another day because it's gonna sound like hate, but it's not. I can't stand the Tatum Ant comparisons because it's too much for me, man. I can't do it. I'm not gonna get into it right now. In case people have shit to say about what I just said. I know that Ant is outplaying Tatum in these playoffs, but I've heard way too much about Ant already surpassing Tatum, and I can't. I'm not there yet, man. That's crazy to me.
Donnie, you know what I shared with our group chat the other day of Jason Tatum being compared to Nikola Jokic and Giannis in terms of playoff wins, where Tatum has, I think, 16 more playoff wins than Jokic and I think 18 more than Giannis, where he's been to 4 conference finals when Jokic has, I think, been to 2. Giannis has been to 1. And first round exits, Jason Tatum only has 1 compared to, I think, Giannis 4, Jokic 1. But it's like NBA fans, and I think we can relate on this, Donnie, because Luka likes to get his fair share of hate by the NBA, online fans of the media, and Tatum the same way. I had talked to my, friends with this, and it's until you win one, they're going to get the hate. And that's where you have to be as a Celtics fan. You can't even get triggered or upset by any of this and any of these comparisons. Like, I brought it up to I forgot who it was the other day, but one of my friends where they were showing the best young players in the league. I'm like, Luka's not even mentioned. And he's like, well, yeah, because, Luka's older. I go, no, Luka's younger than 3 of the 4 players in this.
Yeah.
Luka is almost a year younger than SGA, but no one wants to admit that, right? It's just how the media kind of, narrates everything. And people will judge Tatum of like he hasn't won one. It's like, yeah, because he was in the conference finals at 19, 20 years old, of course. He was ahead of schedule. So you're punishing a guy for that. He's 26 years old. Jokic won his first championship last year when he was 28. Giannis didn't win one until the end of his 26-year-old season. You got to be patient, but it's the same conversation across all the major sports. And soon, I'll be honest with you, Jake, I know the hockey media isn't as crazy as NBA or NFL, but soon if the Oilers don't win one, there's going to be people chirping about McDavid. Oh, he doesn't have a championship. Oh, look at him, doesn't have a cup. It just happens. Until you win one, they're just going to doubt you. You saw it with Alex Ovechkin's entire career with the Capitals until he won one. You saw it at the start of LeBron James's career. And we're talking about LeBron James that people are now saying is the GOAT. Or it's 1-2 with Michael Jordan, right? It's just going to happen. So you just got to ignore it. And, Dunny, I'm also saying that so I can hear it myself, too, because nobody gets hated more than Tatum and Luka online. Yeah. It is tough out here.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And, again, that's why it's tough because, Ant is just the guy who is getting the treatment that Tatum got once upon a time right now. But I don't know. It's just a recency bias thing. It's a prisoner of the moment thing. I think NBA fans are probably the worst fans at being trapped in that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's great though, and it's right. I can accept the whole it don't mean a thing without the ring. And I hope the Celtics are able to do that this year so we can stop some of this discourse. But fellas, great show. We got 2 playoff games tonight and some more throughout the week. So
also, WNBA starts off tonight.
Yes.
Caitlin Clark's
already
balling right now. Yeah. Big year for the WNBA. Big year. All 4 games tonight televised too.
Yep.
Four games on opening night televised. Got to give it a shout out there.
It's great. JBC is giving us our send off with a W show.
Shout out JBC.
Thank you, JBC.
Caitlin Clark 0 for 3 bust.
Oh,
started 0 for 3 bust. Sorry. Gotta call it. I see it.
Big bust for Caitlin Clark. Yeah, we'll see where that goes. I believe they were 8-point dogs in her first start, so we'll see.
Connecticut's not an easy team, though.
No,
they're not
that's
an
a
easy
brutal
team.
draw.
Alyssa Thomas, DeLana Bonner, they got length. They're a good team.
Yeah. So thank you for everyone who listened. Thank you to Trainwreck Sports. Thank you to our great sponsor, Winstreaks. Go download the Winstreaks app. Use our code HHH when you sign up. And thank you all for listening. Enjoy the NBA playoffs. Go Celtics. Later, guys.